Hello viewers, you're watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we are broadcasting live from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue, and also a special welcome to those following us on Q Radio on 103.3. My name is Ceesay, and as we now enter the rainy season, we are joined by officials of the National Disaster Management Agency to discuss, the country's level of preparedness as we enter the rainy season. My guest this week, I have on my immediate right, I have Mr. Sanna Dahaba, who is the Executive Director of the NDMA. Mr. Dahaba, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you, you're welcome.
And also on my left, I have Momodou Ceesay, who is the Director of Operations NDMA. Mr. Ceesay, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Mr. Dahaba, let me start with you as the Executive Director. For viewers who may not know, take us through, what exactly is the NDMA's mandate?
First and foremost, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Office of the Vice President and the staff of the Vice President. Through them, I want to thank the government of the Gambia for creating the enabling environment and support to disaster governance and management in this country. If you look at the National Development Plan, Pillar 1 is resilience. That shows the level of commitment and support and importance that the government attached to disaster management in this country.
Yes, as I said, what is the mandate of NDMA?
The mandate of NDMA, we are responsible for disaster governance in this country, management and governance in this country, starting from prevention, mitigation, response and recovery. All the disaster management cycle, NDMA, that's the NDMA's primary mandate, to make sure that we provide resilience to the community.
Like I said, we are now into the rainy season. How prepared is the Gambia compared to previous years?
Well, no country in this world can prepare enough. We've seen developed countries, what is happening there. But at the level of NDMA, we are really prepared, because preparedness starts with the people. And we make sure that we provide capacity building and knowledge to the people, because when disaster happens, the people are the first responders, the communities are the first responders. This is why NDMA recognized that capacitating the population is very important in terms of disaster preparedness, and provide them with the requisite knowledge in terms of risk-informed knowledge. That's very important. That's why the agency starts with the people. Training volunteers and providing capacity building support to the community.
And Mr. Ceesay, for you, from an operational standpoint, just take us through what preparations have already been completed on the ground.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ceesay. As rightly mentioned by the Executive Director of the agency, NDMA as an institution is prepared for the season that we are in. This started some time back, especially when we received the JAS report from the Department of Water Resources. JAS report basically is the seasonal forecast that Department of Water Resources do prepare annually to inform government and its partners, as well as community members, on the seasonal outlook for a particular year. And when we received that, we realized that there are some informations that are very crucial for disaster risk reduction. And we actually started by soliciting for support to train our human resources as the first responders. Yes, we have the community structures. If you look at the disaster governance structure of the Gambia, for example, you realize that we have regional disaster management committees, we have district disaster committees, we have the disaster governing council at the apex level. So we train our staff on disaster risk reduction, basically focusing on artificial intelligence forecasting, incident management system, and many others. We did not stop at that. We also went further to train 100 data collectors across the country. This was supported by UNICEF, and we actually reached out to all the regions, train our volunteers in preparation for any eventuality. For example, if there's a disaster, we deploy those volunteers to go to the ground and collect data. we did not stop at that. As ED mentioned, we also currently focus more on community-led disaster risk reduction, putting communities at the front, so because disasters happen at community level. So we've sensitized local authorities, including alikalis, councillors, especially along the Koto stream. We've also deployed volunteers for 10-day sensitization along the Koto stream, because in the Gambia, as we all know, we've identified areas as disaster hotspots, which includes Koto stream, Brikama Jambarsani in West Coast region. You go to Jabang, which is also considered an emerging disaster hotspot. You go to North Bank, for example, you have Bara, you have Farafenye, you have Mbapa Mariga. You go to CRR, for example, you see Bansang, especially Bansang Farokono. You go to URR, you see Kaba Kama, around the Kuju Bolong and the like. So if you go to LRR, for example, you see Jara Soma, and other areas. So we've already identified those areas. So we actually try to ensure that, our staffs are prepared mentally, and, we ensure that, we provide the needed capacity building that is required, of course, focusing on risk informed, as alluded to by the executive director. So currently, we are also trying to operationalize the world contingency plan developed by WACA, or the development was supported by WACA. So all the wards that fall within the Kotu corridor, we've developed ward contingency plans. And these contingency plans are the ones that we are currently operationalizing by training ward disaster management committees, highlighting their functions and what they can do also when there is disaster, how to communicate disaster risk information. So those are some of the issues that we are currently doing, and we also try to find out whether there are pumping machines that we are giving to them funds are up and running. We encourage them to test them. So these are some of the issues that we are currently doing.
It's good you've highlighted some of the things that have already been completed on the ground. Edie, as far as the Gambia is concerned, what will you say, is the biggest, disaster risk facing the country?
Well, if you look at the risk profile in this country, you start with flooding, you start with fire incident, you have drought. These are some of the risk profile in this country. But as far as NDMA is concerned, flooding poses the most risk challenge in this country, because flooding comes at a time, and flooding and windstorm are considered as the worst disaster events in this country. If you can recall back 2022 example, there was serious flooding around the greater Banjul area, especially Banjul. You look at 2021, there's a disaster event where windstorm happened in this country, and I think we can register, if my memory serves me right, we registered around 11 deaths. So these are the most
one in Jokado.
In Jokado, these are the most prevalent disaster events in this country. So this is why, as far as NDMA is concerned, our focus has been inform the community and the population about the risk associated with windstorm and flooding. Some time ago, before the rainy season, if you can recall, the Vice President embarked on a tour around the country to look at the disaster hotspot. That took us to North Bank. We went as far as Same Omar Jula, Same Pochonki, Jiro Bakunda, Base. This all to inform himself about the disaster hotspots in this country, so that if government is providing resources, they can be well informed about hotspots in this country.
So are you saying before the Vice President's visit, the government wasn't informed about
the government is fully informed, but the Vice President being providing strategic direction when it comes to disaster. I think it's important for him to see for himself, so that he can advise cabinet and also inform cabinet.
So what different do you think that visit by the Vice President will bring for NDMA as far as your response and all that is concerned?
Well, he is he's the chairperson when it comes to disaster governance in this country. He's the chief minister. I think for him to be well informed about hotspots will be an added value whenever we place a request for support, because he has seen for himself what kind of hotspots can trigger disaster in this country.
Just earlier on, you mentioned some of the what you describe as hotspot. I mean, you mentioned Kotu, you talk about Jabang, Bara, of course, Basse, Kaba, Kama, Soma. Can you share with us, are there other communities that are really vulnerable?
Yes, when you talk about vulnerability, there are a lot of parameters that you have to look at. Okay. And the hotspots that I mentioned, we're looking at flood, for example. Right. But of course, we've seen just a few days ago the windstorm that occurred. And a lot of communities that we are not even mapped out as hotspots were hit. For example, you go to West Coast region, around Brikama, some areas that are not flood prone, they were exposed to the windstorm, and it had affected a lot of households, blowing off the entire roof. So when you're looking at vulnerability, you certainly have to look at the different parameters or indicators, So yes, there are communities like you go to North Bank, for example, the Badibus, from Kerawan down towards Farafenya, you realize that most of the parents' trees are cut down. Yeah. And because the parent trees are not there, there is the community or the region is exposed to windstorm. So if you go to places like Kiang, for example, they are exposed to annual or perennial bushfires, for example. When you look at our hazard profile, he mentioned we have fire as one of the hazards, and LRR is seen as the region that is normally hard hit by bushfire, for example. We've seen frequent domestic fires everywhere in the country. So, in a nutshell, I want to say that when we look at these hotspots, we're looking at different hazard and then looking at the frequency and the impact in that particular community or locality. That's what we are looking at.
Possibly,
and we also have...
Possibly the fire outbreaks in Jara is caused by Nyominka, so I'm not surprised.
I think so.
So, Edie, I mean, earlier on you mentioned about the floods that occurred in 2022.
Yes.
Very serious.
Yes.
So many households were affected. What were the biggest lessons for NDMA?
Well,
after that incident?
The biggest lesson for NDMA, first and foremost, I really want to thank the Vice President. When the flood happened, we actually associate that possibly the bone polder, because the bone polder is reducing in terms of space.
By the way, the late Badraju was the Vice President.
Well, I'm talking about the current Vice President, okay, because that's you are asking me about lessons learned.
Okay.
When I discussed this thing with the Vice President, the current Vice President, he said, well, Banjul, Combo Street and the other, what's the name of this other street? No. Once you clear them, those are the arteries of Banjul. You will never see flood again. I think that's one thing I keep teaching with him. That's something I learned from Banjul. Coming from a rural village, I'm not familiar with.
But he knows Banjul.
I know he knows Banjul.
From Banjul. He knows
so
Banjul
I really want to thank him and commend him. As soon as we did that, we opened those canals. The water start flowing through the bone polder, then pump out. So I think that's one of the lessons that we learned from Banjul. Because we all know water. Water is the most compelling element in the world. Once you close here, the other side is open. So that's something that I actually learned from when it comes to flooding. And since we embark on his advice, there has never been any flooding in Banjul.
And what about other areas such as Jabang?
Well, Jabang, we all know. If you look at Jabang, part of Jabang is sitting on a waterway. I think Social Security, when they were demarcating that, I don't know whether they factor that. But when the flooding in Jabang happened, those are the areas that we work with the National Road Authority to make sure that we create retention ponds. And since we created those retention ponds, the impact of flooding in Jabang has significantly, I don't say it has never happened, but has significantly reduced. And that's through the strategic direction of the Vice President.
Mr. Ceesay, for you, I mean, personally, what exactly have you changed to make sure you're able to improve when it comes to your response?
Thank you. I think one important thing that we are investing on is to build the capacity of our staff first.
Okay.
Because as head of operation, my lieutenants are the program unit. This includes the regional coordinators and other staffs working under them. We believe if our staff capacity is enhanced, we'll be able to inform other people or train other people. And we've also shifted more on community-led disaster risk reduction. There's another milestone that we've achieved, and we think it is paying dividend on knowing that disasters happen at community level. So we work with the communities, making sure that they lead. We provide the technical backstocking. We also, another important thing also we realized when I took over in 2023, to support in providing the tool. If you train your human resources, no matter high their qualifications are, if they don't have the tools to work with, it becomes a problem. So of recent, we have tablets for data collectors. Some time back, NDMA used to take paper to the field, collect data, come to the office, punch it in the computer. But now we collect real-time data. We can go to the field today, collect the data, and it's sent to the server. So I think that is really helping us. And we are also doing a lot of partnership and resource mobilization, even though NDMA currently doesn't have a big project, for example. But we are working with our partners, and they are supporting the agency in terms of running activities here and there. And those are some of the operational activities that we are doing. And really, they are impacting positively on our performance as an institution, with building resilience across the country.
Edie, I mean, at the start of the program, you did spoke about moving from what you call disaster response to disaster prevention. Mm-hmm. Just to make us understand, what does that mean in practical terms?
Well, we all know response is capital intensive. We all know when it comes to disaster response, it's capital intensive. But we have embarked on things like anticipatory actions. You think that this place disaster will happen, and then you go and sort that one out, like what I am just saying. What is happening at Same, Shuruakunda, Jiroba, and Sabi? Because once some of those areas are cross-border flooding, before the impact reaches the village, government has provided resources for us to respond and prepare them, so that when the flooding comes, the impact, we would not say there will be no impact, but the impact will be significantly reduced. So this is why if you can recall, I said the support that NDMA is receiving from the government of the Gambia is actually acknowledged and appreciated in terms of disaster management and response.
So, Mr. Ceesay, how does your early warning system help in achieving, the objective that it just highlighted, moving from, response to prevention?
Yes, early warning as in disaster management is considered an integral part of comprehensive DRR. You do warnings to prepare or respond to disaster situation. And for example, I mentioned earlier on, water resources as a government entity that is providing climate information services. When they produce or prepare their warnings, they share with us. And we, as an institution responsible for coordinating disaster management, we take those warnings and also act on them. Currently, we are sensitizing people preparing them to act on time before disasters happen, and also respond when, for example, it hits. So it helps you to prepare your mindset as an institution or as people, so that you will be able to anticipate that this is something that is coming. I need to move or relocate before it hits. When it hits, this is what I'm supposed to do. So we are using early warning as a preparedness tool, and also in moving forward, we also utilize it for response. So it helps a lot in saving lives. It helps a lot in preventing significant damages to critical infrastructures. I mentioned some days ago, when we receive information from the Water Resources Department that we are expecting rain, and then it will be accompanied by a windstorm and probably thunder and lightning, most of the people that receive this information were prepared. I could remember myself going home. When I saw this storm, I decided to park my vehicle because vision was very short. So I did not want to take the risk to drive in that particular wind. So it helps people really to prepare themselves. And then I think, for the past years, the warnings that we are receiving is really good, and then we appreciate the collaboration between the institutions. But if you look at early warning also, we have risk knowledge. Risk knowledge is basically trying to understand the risks that you are living with, so that you can avoid or prevent, you can also mitigate, those risks from turning into disasters. So when we have disaster risk knowledge, for example, you talked about Jabang. We all know Jabang is on a natural waterway. Yeah. We were tested in 2022. Now, anybody residing around Jabang estate, for example, know that this is a natural waterway because they have the risk knowledge of the environment or the area. So they will be able to prepare themselves when, for example, we are getting into the rainy season. So if you go to North Bank, for example, the Badibus, knowing that our environment is open, is exposed to windstorm, it will enable people to prepare or renovate their roofs before rain starts. So if you have the disaster risk knowledge, it empowers you, it prepares you, it makes you to have that ability to act before disaster strikes.
But here the problem, this is where the problem is. I mean, with all these forecasts and warnings and everything, climate change is making rainfall prediction unpredictable.
Well, when you talk about climate change, like I tell you, no country in this world is actually can avoid the impacts of climate change. Climate change is real.
It's a global issue.
I was in Beijing last week, and they had typhoon, and one of their dam got busted. And that posed serious threat, and life and livelihoods were lost. So there is no country in this world that can say what happened in Ghana 2 weeks ago. Maybe you must have seen it.
It was serious.
I saw it live because I was called. My colleagues really called me that this is happening. What happened in Abidjan? You heard about it. So climate change is real. We must recognize that, and we must face the reality that climate change is real, so that we are prepared for the impact of climate change.
Ceesay, you just mentioned your collaboration with, the other departments in terms of getting information about what they should expect and all that. But aside from that, what technologies or monitoring systems do you have at your disposal to use, before disaster?
No, NDMA is a coordinating institution. We are not actually monitoring to that extent. For example, if you look at the climate, we have the Department of Water Resources, which was established by an act in 1979. And that institution is basically responsible for monitoring the climate, and then they provide information. So for us, currently we are trying to, we are collaborating with them to see how can we strengthen that, because the information that they provide to us help us in our preparedness, and possibly response as well. So we actually don't monitor in terms of using technology. We do apply or deploy technology to do disaster data collection, for example, using tablets. We also use satellite imageries, and we to ensure that we know what the situation look like, or how the situation look like. For example, the ARC, using that the models. We also support or reinforce that using ground truthing and the like. But aside that, we as a coordinating institution, basically we are working with other partners who have those comparative advantage to provide certain information that we probably don't have the capacity to do, to create synergy with them and then move as a country. So that's what we are currently doing. But we are also trying to see how we can enhance the capacity of our staff. For example, when it comes to flood modeling, when it comes to measuring water levels using technology. We are trying to do that. But of course, there's an institution that is doing those things. So it's a matter of us collaborating with them, and they will provide information that we need, and then we can act on time.
Despite the annual awareness campaign that your office continues to spearhead, trying to tell people, what to do and not to do during the rainy season, flooding, continues every year.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, we are now in the era of artificial intelligence, as you are aware. Most of the floodings in this country are associated with cross-border flooding.
How? Make me understand.
Mbapa Mariga, just go to Mbapa Mariga. I don't know whether you know Mbapa Mariga.
I've had the name.
You have the name. You go to Sabi. Just get to know somebody who is from Sabi.
Sabi, after Basse.
After Basse.
Oh, I know Sabi.
Yeah,
I know
exactly.
Sabi I know Sabi very well.
That's a cross-border issue.
Okay.
Go to Same Pachon, Same Shuruakunda, Same Madina, and Same Omar Jula. You will realize that the flooding that's affecting the village are all cross-border related. But now that we are in the era of artificial intelligence, we are now working with some partners so that they apply the artificial intelligence tool. We will be able to determine and know the flood pattern and also the source of the flooding, so that will give us the recipe to address their concerns.
So when did we know that this flooding is cross-border issue?
You will realize that there are some areas in the country that are bordered with our neighboring country. For example, you go to Mbapa Mariga. Mbapa is a community that is very, very close to the border. And sometimes, because of the topography of the area, often you see it will rain in the neighboring country, and it will pass through Mbapa, because there's a gully that divides the community into two halves. So those are happening, because water actually follow its natural way. For example, when for example, this place is considered a natural waterway, even it takes 10 years no rain, if it rains any day above the capacity, runoff will follow its path. Understand? So those are the situations that he's trying to highlight.
But of course, how much of this problem, ED, is caused by human activities?
Well, okay. One thing you must recognize that
poor waste disposal.
Let me tell you, development itself creates disaster, and disaster creates development. If you see some years ago, most of our roads have not been tarred, and then drainage system also, is also a challenge. Yeah. I told at the start of the program, I told you water is the most compelling element in this world. You close here, it will open here. Some few days ago, it rained and people were shouting when flooding happened on OIC Road. That's quite natural, Where water, you close here, it opens here. What we need to do is to create a waterway so that the water will have a passage, so that it will have a canal to empty into the river. I think that's what, if you will look at this new road, the government is trying to create that just to make sure they avoid the flooding when it happens on the water.
Most of the noise also has to do not because, okay, this is natural. People appreciate, people accept that most of this is natural. Yeah. But the other issue is about having roads being constructed without proper drainage system. Isn't that also a factor? That's
a factor, but now there has been a complete paradigm shift. If you look at this OIC road, there are drainage systems, but they are not linked yet because the work is in progress. We also have to recognize that the work is in progress. Unless it is linked to the river, then some of these things are unavoidable. As at now, the work is in progress, and then we have to actually recognize that.
But will you say all these roads will have proper drainage?
Of course,
system,
yes.
Mr. Ceesay?
Yes.
Yes, I think the roads, in my opinion, should have drainage system, especially when the technicians that are highly skilled in road construction deem it necessary. And then I want to say that where probably there is a waterway very close to the road, it should be supported with a drainage so that water can easily move and then be emptied to avoid flood, within the community.
So what do you encounter as the biggest issue, especially during emergencies when you visit these communities? What do you encounter?
It depends. It actually depends what kind of emergency. Like flooding, we all know indiscriminate dumping of waste has a bearing on flooding in this country. Most of the flooding in this country are human-induced flooding. I can tell you that. That's human-induced flooding. Unless until we change our attitude in terms of indiscriminate dumping in this country, I think compliance also has been a big issue. Big issue. Unless we change our attitude, we will definitely continue to encounter these things.
I think that's where the problem is. It's not as if we don't have the laws. Yes. We have the laws in place. It's all about attitude. So what can we do?
I think we need to continue engaging people in a dialogue to raise their awareness. Some know, but some don't know. Yesterday, I think, or day before yesterday, I was in Hilltop Radio, and this was a question that was asked. You go to some places, they will tell you, we are really far from the dump site, and then we don't have a temporal dump site created to allow us to put our waste in, and then might be collected later. So for them, they will clean the drain or their compounds and then just move to the nearest dump site, dump it there and find their way, not knowing that will really bounce back. So we need to sensitize our people. We need to continue raising awareness. At some point, people appreciate and they will really move on. If you go to some part of the world, for example, nobody asks you not to dump waste, anywhere. Yeah. So for me, I think we need to reinforce the policies, but we also need to raise awareness, to ensure that people accept see the reality and accept, and then we can move forward.
It seems Edie want to ask them.
No, what I want to add to that, I agree with BK in terms of creating awareness, but that's not enough. I think the biggest challenge any government is having, especially the Gambia, is enforcement and compliance. We are not enforcing the law.
That's it.
That's the primary challenge that we are facing. Enforcement and compliance when it comes to indiscriminate dumping in this country has been a challenge. And unless we are serious about enforcement, we will continue to get those kind of challenge within our community.
I think it's important because like I always tell people, when we talk about, New Gambia and all that, I'm like, it's not only about making the law, it's about the mindsets. Yes. But once you start enforcing the law and people know, okay, government is serious about enforcing this law, people will respect, all this, this ban and all whatnot. But away from that, Edie, is the NDMA adequately funded and equipped to fulfill its mandate?
NDMA is funded. It depends on how you call adequately funded.
Yes.
There is no country in this world when it comes to disaster that is adequately funded. There is no country, because you don't know the kind of disaster that you will face. Whenever you know about COVID-19,
Yeah.
when COVID-19 was a national disaster, and NDMA was adequately funded to respond to COVID-19.
Okay.
You heard about that.
Yeah.
The disaster governance in this country is in such a way that when disaster happen, the first thing people ask when there is disaster, the following day, that they should get response. That's what the people ask in this country. But we have to be accountable. Assessment is not an event, it's a process. For government to give you the money, you have to provide the data. And data, you cannot generate it in one night. So this is why most of the time when disaster happens, people will start shouting and say, no, they have not responded. No, of course, NDMA recognizes the issue of accountability. We have to assess the disaster event, and also we have to come up with the right data that will be submitted to government for government to provide the required funding in order to respond to that disaster.
In terms of equipment, Mr. Ceesay, vehicles, trained personnel, where are you?
We actually
You don't just respond with bare hands.
Yes,
in terms of disaster.
I agree with you. I agree with you. If you look at our, like I said, the data collectors that we've trained, we secured tablets from partners, and then we actually deploy them to collect data. The other response is that, when, for example, disaster strikes, of recent, workers supported NDMA to provide or procure water pumping machines, and some of the wards, for example, within the Kotu stream, we've deployed or we've given them 2-3 water pumping machines to a particular ward. If you go to central level at NDMA, we have a water pumping machine to support if there's a need. And we also have 2021, when we had the windstorm, 7th July, government of the Gambia actually supported NDMA to provide additional pickup vehicles to enhance mobility for our staff. So those are available. We have trucks, that we support communities in terms of community-led disaster risk reduction, feeder road rehabilitation, where necessary. Sometimes they will make a request. Community want to take the initiative to fill the potholes here and there. So we also do provide them with those equipment, or those equipment. But like Edie mentioned, disaster preparedness is one thing, disaster readiness is another thing. I think that's where many people don't understand. We are prepared, and we are moving into readiness. Readiness means, we have the policy, we have the legal frameworks, we have the trained human resources, we have the other equipment. When we press the button, then we move. We have the structure as well. So we are trying to ensure that, we live up to expectation, even though some will see it as we are a little bit slow. Like Edie said, when disaster hits, we need to deploy our people to go and collect data. We analyze the data. As I'm speaking to you today, we shared the situational report of 2020, the 10th situational report in 2026. So we can tell you that we have registered from January to today over 13,000 people affected by disaster. We can give you their segregation, the number of male, the number of female, the number of pregnant women, lactating mothers, children involved in that, the number of sanitary facilities damaged, So we are doing that.
So what do you do with that report?
So the essence of collecting that information basically is on twofold. One is to provide information for decision making. Like he talked about this disaster governing council. If it is going to the disaster governing council, or he's going to meet with the vice president to brief him as the chair of the National Disaster Governing Council, he needs to present a data. Yeah. And data will help, or that information will help in our planning as a country. But not only that, the country also reports, especially if you look at the Sendai framework, government also report to the global framework to say, okay, this is the disaster outlook for the Gambia in a particular year. So it helps researchers, for example, to conduct research and then probably support their arguments, trying to understand, the disaster events, how they spread across the country. But importantly also, it helps us in our response. If we want to respond, we need to ensure that there is humanitarian accountability. So in that, we will say, in West Coast region, this is the number of people affected by disaster. In URR, this is the number of... So if we are responding to those people, we'll pull the data from the server and then respond. But if we don't do that, what will eventually happen is, if we want to account for the resources that we are provided or that is provided to us, we find it difficult. Because it's not a guesswork.
Mm-hmm. So as we speak, I mean, one will expect the NDMA will have certain things in place. Just in the case of emergency, you can just respond quickly. Because sometimes this is about government.
Yes.
It's a whole process. Yes. Bidding, procurement here and there. Mm-hmm. So one will expect by now, NDMA should have something at their, maybe a store, where you have maybe rice, sugar, just in the event of emergency, you just respond quickly.
No, well...
but right now, if emergency strike, probably Mr. Dahaba said, okay, because we have to follow due process, you have to send documents here and
we have
to
follow due process.
And that takes
this is about humanitarian accountability.
And victims, they don't have patience to wait.
No, well, they don't have patience, but it's about humanitarian accountability. When disaster happened, like what Edie said, we already have data in place. Mm-hmm. This data will be shared with the with humanitarian actors that we call humanitarian. It's not only government. Government is the primary duty bearer, but we also have stakeholders who are responding when disaster happens. Immediately they will respond. Those people are ready, and then they observe the humanitarian principle in terms of humanitarian response. So one disaster happens, you share with. When government is mobilizing resources, other actors will respond immediately.
So how are you coordinating with other actors? Red Cross, the local councils, of course, I mean, security services as well.
From the, if you look at the disaster governance structure, for example, I just go straight to the regions, because you talked about the area councils and the governors. We have what is called regional disaster management committees or municipal disaster committees in case of Banjul and KMC. In those committees, for example, I cite West Coast region, is a multi-sectoral committee which comprises of security forces, Red Cross, and other stakeholders in a particular region. So for us, as an institution, we collaborate with Red Cross, especially when it comes to disaster response. We work with them. Even the windstorm, I had to call the operation the program head of program or the director of program to say, our two heads of offices, for example, in the regions, the branch officer and then that of the regional coordinator need to work together to ensure that they deploy their human resources to collect data. When we prepare the situational report, I share with all stakeholders that we consider as humanitarian actors. What Edie was trying to explain, for example, today I share the situational report. If you look into the report, you will see that this is the number of people that are affected. This is the support that we've provided. Like day before yesterday, we supported 40 households in West Coast region through a support. So now when we do that, a partner can say, okay, I have maybe known food items I want to support. I have food items, maybe it's 10 bags, then we support. And that's how we work.
More like a food bank?
No, we don't have a food bank.
What we are saying I'm just giving an example. You're thinking about maybe
some
rice
people,
and others,
some individuals have that heart to support humanity. So when we share this situational report, they may be interested to come in and say, okay, for us, we want to do this. And that's why we want to ensure that partners in the country actually aligns to government to say government is the duty bearer. So government is the custodian of the data. So you work with them, we'll be able to tell you, okay, this is the number that we have, but this particular number is, out of this number, this particular figure is already supported, we give you the name, or we provide the names to say, no, already we've supported these ones, don't support them because it will be duplication. We do that. We can also say, now let's respond, you can respond to this particular region, another partner support another region, when, for example, there is that need for a response. So we collaborate with all humanitarian actors in the country, including the UN system, the NGOs, and that of government stakeholders.
So Edie, what is the biggest mistake that people make during flooding?
Well, I will not call it a mistake.
Okay.
I will call it awareness, because mistake is something that you don't know about, and it comes to your way. The biggest mistake during flooding is that, one, people will settle on a waterway. It happens. The other one is that people will also, instead of the rubbish induced flooding, instead of collecting rubbish along the way, they will wait until flooding starts and then they start collecting. And the other one is, you will see some of the water some of the houses will be wet, and still people stay inside.
So what do we do about those people?
And when it collapses,
probably they are there against their own will.
No, sometimes it's not against their will. Sometimes it's lack of knowledge.
No,
especially moat house.
Yeah, for example, if you go to Ibo town area, perhaps those who are there, it's against their will. No one wants to live in those conditions during the rainy season, Mr. Ceesay.
Well,
what do you think should be done? Should we consider, or should the government consider relocating them?
Well, I also want to say,
relocation is a very capital intensive.
Yeah, what do you mean about that? It's something that the government can consider.
No. Mr. Ceesay, I want to say that you asked about what is the major problem, and it is talked about people staying in those houses when they actually know that it's flooded. Some people, the building will be flooded. It partially collapsed, still they stay in those partially collapsed buildings.
I'll come. Maybe they don't have the millions to buy lands in
okay, I will come. And then another major challenge that we normally see or mistake, if I will take your word to say mistake, is some people flooding will be happening, they will take waste and dump it in the run of water.
Exactly.
Now, those are serious mistakes, because you don't know where the water will carry the waste that you are dumping in the run of water. So, yes, we talk about everybody should be sensitive to your personal security. And that takes me to the issue of allowing your family to stay in a partially collapsed building. You can say, okay, I don't have a choice. But it should be your responsibility to protect yourself and your family first. And we are doing a lot around that. What we are doing is to ensure we engage communities. If a household is affected by disaster, maybe the house is completely damaged or partially damaged, they can accommodate or house them in their homes. Where homes are not available, they can take them to centers. For example, you go to Bakote. The day before yesterday, we were there on training. The Bakote center, for example, we can use it. If we don't have the center, we don't have homes to accommodate, we can move them to schools. But as an agency, we are also looking forward to having multipurpose evacuation centers, because we want to ensure that disaster management or disaster response are dignified.
How soon?
As soon as we get resources. So we are trying to ensure that disaster response are human rights. They meet human rights standards. For example, we have humanitarian principles. We have this fair standard. We want to ensure that whatever we are doing is aligned or is in line with those principles. So communities are encouraged, because a lot of people are listening. If a family is exposed to maybe flooding, the person is a victim, he doesn't have a place to go, and the house is partially damaged, let's accommodate them. After the rainy season, they fix their houses and they go back.
So, I mean, Edie, what is the fastest way to contact NDMA in the event of an emergency?
Well, we used to have a toll number, free toll number, but it's not working now.
Why?
But we have a regional, well, we have some funding challenge with regard to that, and also the system, we have a system problem.
Funding to sustain
that toll number. But like what,
Really?
I will just reflect on what,
Really?
I will just reflect on, let me finish. Let me finish.
Okay.
That goes through a process.
Okay.
You know, what BK is saying, part of the problem is urbanization. You talk about Ibo Town.
Yeah.
Ibo Town, people settle there before it is even planned. That urbanization in the greater Banjul area is a big, big challenge.
Where does this leave the role of the physical planning?
Well,
like
what I told you, enforcement and compliance, I think you'll just get me to that.
Exactly.
Get me to enforcement and compliance. Example, when people call me and said, Mr. Dahaba, please come, I am flooded. I asked them. They said, where are you? I am at Talindim Farokono. What impression do you have when somebody settled in Farokono?
You even wonder how you reach that.
Exactly. People will come and, where are you? I'm at Bakau Farokono. Farokono is meant for what? Just tell me. Farokono is meant for what?
Well, cultivating rice.
Exactly. Yeah. So these are some of the challenges that we have. Even to access those people, sometimes it's a challenge. Because I don't want to go to Farokono at that time, at night. So these are some of the challenges that the agency is actually facing. Indiscriminate or unregulated settlement is definitely a challenge.
We don't have time.
You see Talinding, you see Ibo Town, you see Bakau Farokono, all those things. Some people are even pushing water, dump waste for them to settle there, and that's risky. Dumping waste just to backfill it, and then they start building on those places. Don't you think
we also need a proper assessment, even regarding all these real estates? I mean, they just sell lands anywhere and anyhow.
No,
without doing proper assessment to make sure whether that place is.
Those places I mentioned, they are not a real estate area. Those are freehold that they get from the alcalis and so on. But go and see, go to Ibo Town, go to Joshua, around the Faro, go to Talindim Farokono, go to Bakau Farokono, and you see what's happening there. Pushing water, dump waste for you to build there.
Well, because that's what they can afford to be able to have something to call.
No, I don't think it's a question of affordability. We all want to go. I leave the village to come to Combo. You leave your village to come to Combo. BK leave Kiang to come to Combo. Combo.
Exactly. Time is up.
I think it's a question of decentralization of services.
Exactly. Time is up, Edie. But in just 30 seconds, your final key message to Gambians as you enter the rainy season now.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank the government, like I said at the beginning, for creating the enabling environment in terms of disaster governance and management in this country. To the people, I want to tell them to be patient. Gambia is, in terms of resources, we are under-resourced. What is the natural resource in this country? What natural resource do we have in this country? We are not endowed with like other countries. The other message that I want the private sector to be involved in disaster management in this country. Disaster knows no boundary. Yeah. When disaster comes, it will not say, this is private sector, this is public sector, this is NGO, this is... No. I appeal to the private sector to be involved in disaster management in this country, because disaster knows no boundary. So with that, I really want to thank...
Extend your support to the NDMA in addressing the issue of...
On that note, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the listeners. I want to thank you for granting us this opportunity to share some of this information with the public.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanna Dahaba, who is the Executive Director of the National Disaster Management Agency, and Momodou Ceesay, who is the Director of Operations at NDMA. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the program. Well, viewers, with that, we bring an end to this week's edition of your weekly State of Affairs program. Do join us next week. Until then, bye-bye from me and the entire team.